Good evening, Who Dat Nation, and happy Wednesday to our Bayou Blitz family. Happy first Wednesday of the off season to our Bayou Blitz family. I hope everybody is doing well out there. For those of you that did not catch Brendan Boylan on one side of the screen and myself, Bob Rose, on this side of the screen, if you did not catch us during our pregame or postgame festivities during the Saint season finale, then I'd like to, on behalf of Brendan, I'd like to wish you all a happy New Year and Merry Christmas. For those of you who haven't caught us in a couple of weeks because of the holidays, glad you're back. I know, Brendan. I'm glad to be here. How about yourself?
Yeah, I am. It's nice. It's also nice to. There's almost like a weird relief that the off
Uh-huh.
season's finally here. It's one of the first times covering this team where you're just like, man, this could really hurry up
Yeah.
and it finally got here. Finally did it. So yeah, happy to be here. Happy to talk about some of the chaos, some of the fun things. I say the off season and into the preseason's kind of silly season. We get to be a little bit more silly, a little bit less. Um, I mean, we're always silly, but we get to be a little bit more silly, and there's more. It's a lot more fun, and it's a lot more loose to comment on reports and rumors and all this, that, and the other than it is just the actual factual things like week in and week out. So that's why I think it's a little bit of like funny, silly season. So we'll have a good time. We'll have a good time. We won't start off funny and silly though, because we do have some. I would call it more serious news with some restructures and what that means. So, Bob, go ahead and tell the people about Ryan Ramczyk and the situation that's going on. He has restructured his contract with the New Orleans Saints.
Yeah, actually, the word we were told to use was rework, which we wrote about it. The article is on my page and on the Saints News Network page. But the New Orleans Saints and offensive tackle Ryan Ramczyk have officially agreed to a reworked deal for Ryan, that will reduce his salary and his base salary for the 2025 season. Remember, folks, he's still under contract. Uh, it will reduce his base salary for this upcoming 2025 season and save the Saints a little bit over $16 million in cap space. Now, the sobering news about it is, that basically paves the way for Ramczyk to retire officially after June 1st, which will reduce the cap hit and the dead cap money for future seasons, which the previous restructures have created. Ryan Ramczyk did not rework his current contract to save the team money and come back. He's only saving the team money, in the immediate and foreseeable future, but then is going to step aside, officially. Which, I mean, if you followed us, if you followed the Saints, if you followed Ryan, you knew that this was only a matter of time before becoming official. Knee issue of his is degenerative, so we pretty much knew last off season that he was not going to be back on the field again for the New Orleans Saints or any other NFL team, and that's what's sad about it.
Yeah, still a younger guy. Has been a huge part of the success that the team had
Mm-hmm.
from 17 to 2020 or 2021, and really made a name for himself as one of the best run blocking tackles, if not the best run blocking tackle in all of football. And remember, guys, we're not that far removed from a lot of people saying the Saints were the best offensive line in the league.
Mm-hmm.
And Ryan Ramczyk on one side and Teron Armstead on the other were a big reason for that. Those guys were pillars for what they were able to do, not just in the passing game, but look at the seasons Mark Ingram had before he left for Baltimore. Obviously, look at the seasons that Mara had. Underrated, and he'll go down as one of my most underrated players
Mm-hmm.
that I ever covered in Latavius Murray, and what he was able to do in the run game because of Ryan Ramczyk, because of what the Saints were able to build. So it is upsetting. However, I'm glad it got to a point where it wasn't like he was playing and that knee was just going to. It did kind of collapse and give out on him, but it could have been a lot worse. you hear these horrible stories about football players, athletes, particularly offensive linemen who, like have no motion parts of their body because of the
Yep.
hits that they took. So I'm hoping for retired life for Ryan goes well, and that the injury and recognizing the severity of the injury came at a time where, he can still run around and be, the fun guy that he is for his family. But that is kind of the sad news and not so silly and fun season stuff that we had to get out of the way here in the first 8 to 10 minutes of.
Mm-hmm.
That's the latest on Ryan Ramczyk. So yeah, look for an official announcement post June 1st for retirement. I think it's writing's on the wall. I think it's past that. So I don't know if there's a saying that is past writing on the wall. We might have to come up with one. It might be a part of the silly season here. But the writing is more than just on the wall for Ryan Ramczyk's official retirement. It's looming here in the next few months. Speaking now about guys that are on the roster, and DJ with his question gives this a nice little transitional flow. He asks first about the coaches, but I'll go for the second half. And he said, would you guys restructure Carr's contract or let him go or keep him? So that's going to go straight into Derek Carr's comments this week when asked about taking a pay cut. Derek said no. And then he had a little bit of mumbo jumbo about, well, like, look what I put on tape and this, that, and the other, but that ultimately he would be open to a restructure if that was going to ultimately help the team. So he followed like the basic rules of journalism and broadcasting: positive, negative, positive. No, would not take a pay cut. Yeah, something like that. He was in the realm. He tried. His PR trainer would probably give him like a C on that one.
At best.
Yeah, at best. So, Bob, I'll open the floor first while I pull up the official quote, just so we can throw it out there once again. But your thoughts on the Derek Carr situation, because I think over the last few weeks, particularly him not playing the last few weeks of the season, at least to the fan base, there's been a lot more rumbling of, well, is Derek going to even be back for next year? What are your thoughts?
I mean, first of all, I know the large majority of the fan base does not want Derek Carr back, but it is a legitimate question until the Saints settle for whomever their next head coach is going to be, because oftentimes when you see a coaching change at the top, there's also a quarterback change, unless you're talking about a team with a young stud, and Derek Carr is neither young or a stud. But having said that, I've always felt that Derek will most likely be back in the Saints uniform, mainly because of the way his contract is currently structured, with the Saints. And I realize, the Denver Broncos and other recent teams have moved on from high-priced quarterbacks. The Atlanta Falcons are about to do so, in all probability, with Kirk Cousins. But those other teams, they were able to take the major cap hit. The New Orleans Saints simply will not be able to field a roster, if they eat Derek Carr's dead cap money, and that's why I believe that Derek is going to be back with the Saints next year. Not only be back, but most likely, be agreeable to a restructure, which, folks, is a vastly different thing than just expecting someone to take an outright pay cut. There aren't many people walking the face of the earth that would say in any to any employer, oh yeah, I'm willing to stay. I'm willing to take a pay cut. However much you want to cut me down, I'm cool with. And that goes for NFL players. I know Alan Ulrich and I addressed this on Under the Dome last night, and I said largely the same thing. NFL players, the better PR, departments of teams or PR handlers of players will spin it in a way to make it look like a Tom Brady took a pay cut for his team. these players are still getting their money. It's just being pushed around and shuffled and termed differently, to help create salary cap space. Which, by the way, folks, is what Mickey Loomis and Kai Harley have been doing for years. Derek Carr was specifically asked about a pay cut. So of course he's going to say no. And Brendan's about to hit you with the exact quote in a minute. Derek, as he typically does, words things the wrong way, doesn't seem to know his audience when he speaks, and that's just like if the Derek Carr hating portion of the Saints fan base is already aflame, this is just like spraying a hose with gasoline on that flame, because of the way he worded things. But again, obviously, he's not going to take a pay cut. A restructure, I fully expect. In fact, the team pretty much needs to do that, if they're going to be able to sign even mid-market free agents this offseason. Now, if a new head coach, and this is a different story, and it segues shortly into our next segment. If a new coach not only decides I don't want Derek Carr to be my quarterback, but is also has the support of management, ownership, and front office in doing so, then maybe you'll see the Saints take take the major dead cap hit that would come with releasing Carr, most likely with a post June 1st designation. But make no mistake, it would be a massive, massive hit. But Derek Carr is not going to take any kind of pay cut. Instead, he's going to be most likely restructured, probably before free agency in mid-March.
So here's the quote, and this came from this is Carr speaking to Kat Terrell at ESPN. He said, "Quote: I wouldn't take a pay cut. Yeah, I wouldn't do that, especially with what I put on tape. Would I restructure? Absolutely. I'll always help the team that way. But there are things that you put out there and that you earned. Even in some cases, it could be worse, but." I felt confident when I signed it that this would give the team the best flexibility at the time. But there's always kind of respect as a quarterback. Well, still we're in that respectful lane. We're good, build the team. But yeah, I wouldn't take anything less to do this. It's hard enough putting our bodies through it, and you're trying to get everything you can for your family for it. You could absolutely word that better. I get where he's coming from. I understand what he's saying. But by God, do you need some PR? Because that was terrible. And I will throw this because Ron threw it in the comments. So thank you for saying this, Ron. According to Nick Underhill, Derek was not asked by the team to take a pay cut. That was just a quote he had said. So thank you, Ron, for throwing that in the comments and into the chat.
Yeah, it was a media question, specifically Kat, that asked Derek Carr if he would be agreeable to a pay cut, and Derek responded. And in a way, I respect the honesty, and the bluntness, because anybody who knows me knows that I'm an honest and blunt guy. But you have to know your audience too, especially the way the fan base feels about you right now. As you said, Brendan, he either needs PR people, or he has to know when to just answer the question fairly politically correct while still getting your point across, and then just shutting the hell up and moving on.
Yeah, you know how this could have been great. All I'm going to do is cut parts out of this, right? We're going to play a game called Brendan is Derek Carr's PR guy.
I like this.
Like, this would have been fine, Derek, right? The question was, would you take a pay cut? Blah, blah, blah. I wouldn't take a pay cut. Would I restructure? Absolutely. I'll always help the team that way. That's it. Literally, those two sentences that were the first 2 out of 3 sentences out of his mouth would have been fine. It is the other paragraph that I read that I have an issue with. Because what Bob said is absolutely right. If my boss came to me tomorrow and was like, "Hey, Brendan, look, so you're going to continue to do the same work that you're doing, but are you good taking a pay cut?" I'd be like, "No. No, I would not." So from that aspect, I understand saying that, but I'm not one of those guys that likes to attack players or anything. That's just not my style. It never has been. So I hope this doesn't come across as an attack. But there's got to be some level of insecurity within the human being of Derek Carr to have to say everything else that he said, right? There's got to be, whether that be insecurity because you kind of feel it from the locker room, or you feel it from the front office, or you have the insecurities because you don't know about the coaching staff that's being brought in after you had, the guy who drafted you as your head coach,
Mm-hmm.
right? Whatever that insecurity is coming in, there's some insecurities for you to have to publicly say, like, well, look what I put on tape. And like, I've earned that. It's like some things you keep to yourself, some things you keep
Mm-hmm.
within your circles. If I was in that position and I wanted to text Bob that's one thing. But it's a whole nother thing to go into, a press conference room, media outlets, and just say that out loud. And that's where my problem is. Look, Derek, we said it at the end of last year, his last few weeks last year looked like a really good quarterback. Obviously, the start of the season for the Saints, those first 2-3 weeks, his numbers weren't like resounding. His numbers were not Drew Brees like. And given what, there was not a quarterback that came close to 5,000 yards this year. And I think there was only a handful that was at or even over 4,500. So it's not like we're in the days of just chucking the ball all over the place. But he was always throwing like 200 yards, 215 yards, those games. Couple touchdowns, wasn't making a lot of mistakes. Obviously, the Saints were just kicking butt. Yeah, that tape, he looked like he had control of the offense, and that's what we expected out of Derek Carr. I remember coming up to Pennsylvania before the season started, and Bob was working on an article. And he was trying to list, like, where would he rank Derek Carr amongst NFL quarterbacks in the preseason. And the crazy part was when he asked me that, like, okay, you make your list and let's compare. And so off the top of my head, I'm just jotting off quarterbacks. I'm thinking, certainly Derek Carr has got to be like the top 12 quarterbacks in the league, right? And then we start doing the list, and I was like, damn, like Derek Carr might not be top 15 in the league. Or we're like, would you take this guy to that guy, right? So that's where we both kind of struggled at that point. I think ultimately we had Carr somewhere around like 14 or 15, if my memory serves me right. So like right in the middle of the pack, right at the Andy Dalton line, right? And it was one of those things where it's like, okay, well, this is what we expect. So to come out and say, well, look what I've put on tape, it's like, okay, dude, like calm down, right? You're not breaking any passing records. You haven't been when's the last time Derek Carr's been to the Pro Bowl? It's got to be the year that he broke his leg in the playoffs, right?
Yeah, I think it was. He might have gone, that other year that the Raiders snuck into the playoffs, and got beat by the Bengals in a wild card round. What was that? 2020, 21, 2020 or 21, one of the two.
But yes, you're an average, maybe a little above average NFL quarterback. But like Bob said, know your audience. You're already not very liked, and you never want to be the replacement for like a GOAT, right? Or one of the best in franchise history, or a guy who led you to the promised land. And some of you may stop me and say, well, Brendan, there's about 7 other quarterbacks that you could name before we got to Derek Carr. But I mean, like Jameis started a handful of games. Like ultimately, like it was Derek. He signed the big contract. He was supposed to be the guy. You never want to be in that position because there's an ungodly amount of expectation and pressure to that. But not only has he not lived up to the expectations, not only has he crumbled under the pressure at points, but he makes stupid ass statements like that.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's really hard for the average fan to rally behind you because you're almost not relatable at all. After having a quarterback, and not just Drew, but many guys in the Saints locker room that is very relatable, that were leaders of the locker room and leaders of the team, even though they're multimillionaires and they're these superstar athletes, they were still relatable. When Derek Carr speaks, even what he said today about finding his forever home, I'm super happy for Derek and his family. They found their forever home. They're moving back to California, and that's where they're going to permanently live. Okay, great.
Not a good time.
Not a good time to bring that up either. Exactly. It's like, dude, I'm so happy for you. Like, if I was in a position, I'd want to be telling everybody, dude, I found my forever home. I'm never going to whatever. Terrible time when there's a lot of question marks about your future with this team. He's an unrelatable guy that says really stupid things and just doesn't hit home with the audience. And that's what's the most frustrating thing about Derek Carr. I'm not frustrated about the money he got. I'm not frustrated about the Saints going to get him. I'm not frustrated that he's the starting quarterback of this team because the Saints went out and got the best guy available, right? I'll tip my cap to them for going after that. And a guy that Dennis was very comfortable with, right? Checked all the boxes there. He hasn't lived up to expectations. So be it. There's plenty of guys that haven't lived up to expectations. I love Jameis Winston. He didn't live up to expectations in New Orleans. He lived up to expectations for like 2 games in Cleveland. But ultimately hasn't checked the boxes there. So be it. Happens all the time. My problem with Derek Carr is he's unrelatable. He says really dumb things. And it's not just like it's happened once. This has become a trend.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, my Lord. Like, at what point does somebody just say, you know what, Derek? Just stop talking.
Yeah. Yeah, because I don't know about you, Brendan. I really don't want our Bayou Blitz off season every week to be this is what Derek said. This is with this week.
No, absolutely.
This is what we think he meant. This is what he should have said. I do like the Brendan Boylan, PR man for Derek Carr movement. As a short weekly segment. But I don't want to have to talk about what idiotic thing Derek said, week in and week out. I don't. Because Frank, as a quarterback, I've called him a name and a hat guy several times, because this is what I mean by that. He is one of about 10, 12 quarterbacks that you could throw all their names in a hat, close your eyes, pick out the name, and get this reaction. Okay, I think I can win with this guy. If I have this system, if I have these players in place, if those players stay healthy, we might be able to even make a playoff run, not a championship run, but a playoff run. If all these things fall right. That's what Derek Carr is. Just like Kirk Cousins, Geno Smith, Sam Darnold, Daniel Jones, Russell Wilson, the Aaron Rodgers we see before us, Jimmy Garoppolo. Oh God, and I could go on and on and on. You get my point. There are 10 to 12 guys in the league right now that fall under that exact category.
Absolutely. And not to knock any of the guys that Bob just named, there's a very short list of guys that you throw their names in the hat and you pull a name out and you're like, yes, we have championship aspirations.
Mm-hmm.
There's probably
6
dudes.
I'd 5 to 6, yeah.
Max every year that you're like, yeah, we have championship aspirations this year, right? Because frankly, if we're going to play that game, like guys that would be in that hat, we're like, oh, okay, like I would still take Geno over Derek Carr.
And that's fair. I wouldn't. And we had this debate at the beginning of the season. Tua over Derek Carr, Russell Wilson over Derek Carr. Whether or not we would. And again, that's why they're name in the hat guys, because you can sit here and have debates and literally have the opinions almost split right down the middle.
Exactly. So that's where we are with Derek Carr. Derek, congrats on your forever home. Wish you would have waited a couple weeks.
Yeah. Now for the next couple weeks.
Yeah, for the next couple weeks, go to your forever home. Be safe in California. And for any viewers, in California, you're very safe out there. But yeah, just go work out in LA and let's not say anything for a while, Derek. That is Brendan, the PR guy, speaking to you, Derek Carr. Go out to California, enjoy your vacation, enjoy your family, your kids, enjoy much warmer weather than Bob and I have in our parts of the world right now. And just let's not hear from you for a while. Okay, moving on. The biggest thing with the New Orleans Saints, Bob, has been, they don't have a head coach. And there has been a laundry list of names that have kind of been thrown into a hat. And there have been some reports that the Saints are interviewing some people and reports that maybe they're not. And it's been a little bit of a cluster. you don't really know, right? The average fan is probably deeply confused on whether the Saints have interviews lined up for X, Y, and Z. So, Bob, can you provide the people the confirmed interviews that the Saints have? I'm not asking for the people they've put in requests for, but people that have confirmed interviews this week.
The confirmed interviews or scheduled interviews or ones that have already interviewed. Obviously, Darren Rizzi, Aaron Glenn, defensive coordinator of the Lions, Anthony Weaver, defensive coordinator of the Dolphins, Mike Vrabel, I am pretty sure has already interviewed, ex-Titans coach. Those are the ones that we know. Kellen Moore, Joe Brady, Mike Kafka are all scheduled to happen. Those are requests that have been put in, answered, and scheduled, although I do not have confirmed days or times. The ones that have been falsely reported, David Shaw, no. Davis Webb, the quarterback coach of the Broncos, no. Cliff Kingsbury, while that's a guy I'd like them to talk to, no. The offensive coordinator of Washington has not been asked. The request from the Saints has not been put in. That doesn't mean it won't be, but it hasn't yet. And like Brendan tells you guys every single year, and he gives me a proverbial pat on the back when he does it. Be very careful who you're reading, who you're believing, and who you're listening to. Because there are the David Shaw, Davis Webb, Cliff Kingsbury thing that was all bullshit that was thrown out there, supposedly sourced by the way, a couple of well-respected, or at least respected, national reporters. I'm not going to call them insiders anymore, because once you've done stuff like this and you've done it intentionally, Justine Anderson, okay, I threw one under the bus. You've lost all credibility with me, and frankly, you should through the majority of the fan base. But no, David Shaw, ex-coach of the Stanford Cardinal, Davis Webb, Cliff Kingsbury, requests or scheduled interviews have not happened. That doesn't mean it won't, but it hasn't happened yet. The confirmed ones, again, they're confirmed, already happened, or already scheduled. Darren Rizzi, Aaron Glenn, Joe Brady, Kellen Moore, Anthony Weaver, Mike Kafka, and Mike Vrabel. We believe that an interview is forthcoming with Chiefs offensive coordinator Matt Nagy. But again, the Saints have only shown interest. I do not even believe that an official request for an interview has been submitted.
And there's the latest from Bob Rose. Yeah, this is a little bit of an odd thing for Saints fans. Haven't had to deal with it in quite a while, and certainly really haven't had to deal with it since the age of social media, right?
Yeah.
Where there is a large net cast for a coaching search. Obviously, the last one with Dennis Allen, he was the favorite the whole time, and we kind of knew what was going on. This one is like, we have no idea. So to hear, there's got to be like 10 to 12 names that have been thrown out over the last couple days. And like Bob said, some confirmed, some not reported accurately, I guess is the nice way to say it. And like you said, like respected people. And then you got Nick Underhill coming in and be like, no, that's not it. So shout out to Nick. Yeah, I don't know how you feel about this whole process. I think the one thing that really throws me off with all of this is Clint Kubiak. And what I mean by that is I would fully expect whoever the head coach position is offered to for Mickey and the Saints brass to say, okay, we have one condition, is that you keep Clint Kubiak. That's what I fully expect.
Really?
Right? I fully expect that. And I don't know how it's going to work. I have no sources. I'm saying gut feeling, Brendan, is that maybe the entire rest of the coaching staff, whatever, but that there's going to be some holdup on Kubiak.
And
that,
see, if that happens, I think it's a colossal mistake by the Saints. And that's no disrespect to Clint Kubiak. I love Clint Kubiak. I'm lukewarm at best on the job that he did this year. Frankly, if you were to grade him, you got to give him an incomplete, because after week 2, he didn't even have. He never had anything close to a full deck of cards. But generally speaking, I still believe he's a young, bright coach. With a bright future in the NFL. So I wouldn't be angry if the Saints decided to keep him. I would be angry, however, if I learned, and Brendan, you've known me for a while, you know my personal story better than a lot of people. So you know that this particular aspect hits home with me on a personal level. I would have a major problem if it came out that the Saints, with any of these coaching interviews, said, we're interested in you, but you got to keep Clint, or you got to keep Joe Wood. You got to keep anybody, because I'm a strong believer in, if you hire me as a head coach, I should be allowed to pick my players, or at least have major input. I should be allowed to pick my coaching staff, because I'm going to be retained based off of my success. So why would I want anybody that I didn't choose myself to help me attain that success? I'm 100% sure. In fact, it's the question. One of the main questions should be asked. Like, a couple names on this list. Aaron Glenn, Anthony Weaver specifically. They're defensive guys. So when you interview a defensive guy, your first question better be, or one of your top first 3 anyway, better be, what's your plan on the offensive side, Anthony Weaver? If you're okay with Clint Kubiak, then fine. If you're not, then you better have a clear-cut plan for the way that you want to move forward on that side of the ball. And I say it that way because Anthony Weaver, Aaron Glenn, you're defensive guys. So obviously your expertise is on that side of the ball. That's one of the reasons why we have you in here for an interview in the first place, is because we believe in you on that side of the ball. What's your solution for the other side? And the same question goes for any of the offensive guys, Joe Brady, Kellen Moore, etc. What's your plan for the defensive side of the ball? Part of the reason that you may be absolutely right, Brendan, and the Saints, whether they put this forth as a condition or not, they may be hopeful to retain a Clint Kubiak or any of the offensive assistants. I think the most likely one would be Clint, and perhaps that's the reason why they're choosing some of these guys to interview that they have. I would have to dig a little bit deeper to see if an Aaron Glenn or a Joe Brady or any of them had a relationship with Clint or Gary, his father, Gary Kubiak, because that might very well be a reason why they're sitting down to talk to him. I did discover that there were a couple of threads that most of these candidates do have in common, which we can get to in a minute. But like I said, it would hit home with me on a personal level if the Saints were saying to any of these interviewees, we want to keep Clint, or we want to keep any assistants, for the reasons that I spelled out before.
So DJ did ask, and you kind of answered the question already, was what coaches did you guys mention that have worked or have ties with the Kubiaks? So Bob, you know what, Bob? There's an article for you. There's a whole article. Mm-hmm. Ties to the Kubiaks with these guys. Ultimately everything that you said, I think what this is how much faith and confidence that I have in the Saints front offices at this point, is that the reason, maybe not all of the reason, but part of the reason you're seeing familiar faces and familiar names on this list, Aaron Glenn, Joe Brady, is that it's like, hey, we're going to scratch your back, you scratch ours, right? Keep Clint. on the staff in some capacity, And obviously, he's not going to, just like Derek Carr's not going to take a pay cut. Kubiak's not going to become a quarterback's coach after being the offensive coordinator, right, or anything like that. But ultimately, I could see, hey, Aaron, you're a defensive guy. We've already picked the offensive guy. Can you guys kind of make this work? And that's where my lack of faith in the front office is that it's just going to be one of these, let's bring in a familiar face. Like we joked about a week ago, the ghost of Sean Payton continues to haunt the halls, and it just be this whole thing to where I really feel like this is an opportunity for the Saints to strip it down and start over from top to bottom. I'm sure we'll have more conversations in the offseason about certain players and whether they're going to be, staying with the team, released, traded, what have you, especially the veteran guys. But this is a really good opportunity. Yeah, you might suck next year. You might suck the year after that. But at least you get to build from the ground up, opposed to trying to stretch this thing out any further. John just said continuity. Yeah, pretty much. That's a good word, John. Good one. And that's just.
I mean, if your continuity is good, then yeah, I'm all for it. But the last,
4 years without a playoff appearance. I don't really know. I mean, in the last 4 years, a trend that I've noticed for 3 of the 4 years, I guess, is that first week or two, the team gives you this unrealistic hope, right? So Jameis's first year, they go and play a home game in Jacksonville, and they beat the crap out of Green Bay, right? Jameis throws for 5 touchdowns, and you're okay, cool. There are flaws with this team, but this is a team that's going to make the playoffs. Didn't happen, right? And then you get the following season, you get the Atlanta game in Mercedes-Benz Stadium, right, in Atlanta. You have that crazy comeback, and it's okay, Jameis is back, Mike Thomas is back, we're going to roll. Doesn't happen. This season, first 2 weeks of the season, everybody's saying the Saints are going to the Super Bowl. They're one of 3 teams to score 90 points in their first 2 weeks ever in NFL history. The other 2 won the Super Bowl. And then, to win 3 games after that for the rest of the season. So, yeah, there's continuity in just not living up to the expectations of your own week 1s and week 2s. There's a continuity of having a loser's mentality, right? I think sports psychology, obviously it's something that is being studied a lot more, but I think it is something that is very, I don't think it's talked about enough in certain aspects. And one thing is, the Saints went on, a 7-game losing streak this year. When you don't win for 2 months, guess what? You almost forget how to win. You don't forget what it's like to win. You know the feeling of when you win a ball game, but your brain almost forgets how to win, how to come up clutch at the last moments of the game, how to step up and make a big play. And I'm not saying these guys are weak-minded. I'm not saying anything like that. Obviously, they're professional athletes. They're the best in the world at what they do. But your brain tricks on you, and you forget how to win football games. And that's the kind
or it's almost PTSD when stuff starts to go wrong. It snowballs because your mind, whether it's a conscious thought or whether it just creeps in through your subconscious. Here we go again. Just like any human being, when they get we've all been there, many of us multiple times, when your life gets into a rut, you don't know how to pull yourself out of it. So. And sometimes you don't even realize you're in a rut. If and when you do, it's very difficult to pull yourself out of it because you don't know how, because it becomes almost muscle memory. And the brain is a muscle, an organ, I realize, but Yeah, so muscle memory works for the brain too. So like you said, it's almost PTSD, and and that's what creates the snowball effect. And you physically, mentally, and emotionally cannot drag yourself out of it.
Exactly. And even with all the injuries and everything this year, like still, the expectations for this team are high from the fan base, and rightfully so. So this is your opportunity to go get a coach that you know changes the mentality, gets back to Saints football, whatever that may look like. So with that, Bob, you named a couple guys. It's really early in the process to start naming favorites or anything like that. So I'm going to broaden it a little bit. Not so you're naming favorites, and not so you're leaning towards a defensive mind guy or an offensive minded guy, but like ultimately, what do you want to see out of the next head coach of the new?
I want to see I'd like to see a younger guy, a coach that's really anxious to make a name for himself. Similar to what we saw out of Sean Payton back in 2006, similar to what we saw out of Jim Haslett in 2000. I mean, it didn't ultimately work out for Jim, even though he started off very well. But to me, a younger guy just is going to be hungry. Is not going to come in with the mentality of, well, such and such worked for me before when I had a little bit of success. So I'll just do a little, I'll do that same thing, only I'll tweak it here and there so I don't get fired this time. I don't want old habits. In other words, that's why I prefer a younger guy. I want a strong personality. Dennis Allen was the anti-strong personality. And that's actually, as Alan and I were talking, I'm disappointed in myself that I didn't realize this as I was writing the articles. But there's a couple of things that the names that they have, will, or are scheduled to interview have in common. Aaron Glenn and Joe Brady have ties with Sean Payton, strong personality. Matt Nagy, assuming they interview him, and Mike Kafka, long ties with Andy Reid, strong personality. Mike Vrabel, as we all know, long ties with Bill Belichick, strong personality. Anthony Weaver, ties with John Harbaugh, strong personality. So at least on paper, that part of the box is checked off. I'm not one of those people, and I made fun of him last night on the Under the Dome. I'm getting people that are firing back at me when I post the articles. And by the way, folks, I just post the news right now. I'm not saying, when I post an article, I'm not saying the Saints should hire Mike Kafka, the Saints should hire Anthony Weaver, the Saints shouldn't hire Mike. I'm not saying any of that. I'll give you reasons why the fit could work, why it couldn't. That's my job. But it cracks me up, the one, and there are more of the ones saying, "Oh, the Saints don't need another defensive coach. We don't want another defensive coach." Did you see the way that unit played this year? I think you could make a strong case for wanting a defensive coach. But no, I'm not on that either side of the fence. I'm not saying I need an offensive guy. I need a defensive guy. Because what the other thing that I want, whatever coordinator, especially if it's whatever coach they hire, especially if it's a young one, bring in strong defense or defensive and offensive coordinators too. Somebody that has a legitimate system, but is also innovative out of that system, not just someone that comes in saying, well, I work for so and so and they use the West Coast offense, so I'm going to use the West Coast offense. And I say West Coast specifically because Sean Payton kind of had that background, but he put his own twist on it. He combined West Coast with the Air Coryell type of system. And then developed his own playbook from there. Those are what kind of coordinators I want to see brought in, ones that are developing their own playbook. And to bring in those type of coordinators, you have to have a coach willing to delegate a little bit. We know Dennis Allen was a strong defensive coach. Sean Payton was a strong offensive coach. When those guys got to be head coaches, they took control of that side of the ball, and it worked for Sean Payton. It didn't work for Dennis Allen. So, whatever coach they come in, that does come in, they have to have ties, with a strong staff that they're going to put together around them.
So what you just said in with innovation and coordinators that are essentially not scared to think outside of the box, try something different, um, a little bit fearless as a play caller, right? Those type of things. You know what goes really great with that? And I'm just going to stir the pot because it's silly season. A new quarterback, a young quarterback.
Uh-huh.
And we'll get into those conversations as the offseason continues on what should happen. But I'm gonna throw it out there for like the 7th year in a row, or however many years it's been. Give me a mobile quarterback, please. Like, please. I'm not asking for Lamar Jackson. I'm not asking for a guy like Michael Vick. I'm not asking for a dude that's just like a superhuman athlete. I'm asking for a guy who can move a little. Like, it ended up not going well. It ended up being a terrible game against Vegas. But like the first play of the game, like the Rattler like 25 yards run, I was like, oh my god, we finally like. I got excited. I was like, okay, we're using a quarterback to do things like that. Taysom Hill, like those were fun, and Taysom has a winning record as a starting quarterback.
Let me ask you this, Brendan, and Alan and I didn't have time to get into it last night. Rather than you tell me your favorites, out of the guys that they have, will, or are scheduled to interview, give me 2 or 3 names that you'd like to see the Saints talk to that hasn't been scheduled or done yet.
Okay. You might not like this one, but I would like to see them also. While young guys are nice, I would like to see a mix of some veteran guys that have some head coaching experience.
That's fair.
So should Mike McCarthy become available, I think that would be an interesting guy to talk to. I'm not saying necessarily hire, but I think it would be an interesting conversation to have. So that's one for me. Other guys, is it cheating to say Ben Johnson because everybody wants?
No. I don't. I don't
Johnson.
think they're going to end up even talking to him. But no, it's not cheating to say that.
Just what he's been able to do up there, and I mean, you want to talk about a career resurgence. Obviously, another guy in the NFC South and Sam Darnold, career resurgence this year. But over the last few years, like not enough people are talking about Jared Goff in national media, and they haven't for the last few years, right? Like he was getting written off with the
he and I still consider him this. He was one of those name in a hat guys.
He was for a long time, and people thought that the Rams like fleeced of the deal to get Stafford and ultimately win the Super Bowl. And yes, Goff is a name in a hat guy, and the fact that the system he's in with the players around him in Detroit fit him perfectly. But let's not forget that, and I'm sorry, but he did take the Rams to the Super Bowl. Whether they deserved to go to the Super Bowl or not is a whole different story. But
he took the Rams to the NFC Championship game, which is good. Yes, but he did not take the Rams to the Super Bowl.
No, that was. Let's not go there today. We were having a good show, but ultimately, the Rams were very competitive, and at that time, kind of similar, right? Like Todd Gurley was still a dominant back in the league. Right now, he's got Jamar Gibbs, who is outstanding in his own right. Receiver wise, maybe not any like hotshot names when he was at the Rams or anybody that really like stood out. But guys that were capable and guys that made plays. And now with the Lions, he's got kind of similar, but the like up and coming stars at the positions and Amon-Ra St. Brown and what have you. So yeah, like look what he's done with that, and also be able to just mix in and do different things and be innovative. Like I don't think they're gonna interview him either, but a third one. Can I think of a third one that is not on the list yet? they're on the list, but I think Anthony Weaver's a good one.
I like Weaver a lot.
But I think that will ultimately be a guy that gets heavy consideration. I think he's a guy that ends up being like a top 3 finalist for the job. I think they completed their virtual interview today with Weaver. So those would be my 3. The one thing that I don't like, and that's where I thought the question was going when he first started saying that, was like, hey, like, could you name me 3 guys that you just absolutely don't want to be the head coach?
No, man, because I get that comment after no, we don't want him. No, we don't want him. No, we don't want him. Who the hell do you want then? So no, I wasn't going to ask you that.
I want Bob Rose.
Appreciate that.
I said this the other day. I'll say it again. I'll say it until the hire is made, maybe even after the hire is made. I don't want no one with any ties to Mickey Loomis and Sean Payton.
So you don't want Aaron Glenn. You're anti-Aaron Glenn and anti-Joe Brady.
I love Aaron Glenn. He's a fantastic coach. He would be a very good head coach.
Mm-hmm.
I am biased, and it is not right for me to be biased because he's a hell of a football coach. I don't want him here because
that's fair.
I just feel like you're going to get stuck in the twilight zone if you do it, right? And then the fan base is going to think very similarly. And it is this whole the ghosts haunt the Superdome. And I said, this is your time to, do whatever you got to do, you can perform whatever, voodoo magic you want to get the ghosts out, but the ghosts got to go. There's no more bringing ghosts in the house. And that's just kind of where I am. Greg says he likes Mike Vrabel. John says, can you run over to Pittsburgh and kidnap Mike Tomlin for us?
I tell you what, the Pittsburgh fan, to hear the Pittsburgh Steelers fans talk, and a lot of it is race based. I'll just flat out say it. To hear the Pittsburgh Steelers fans talk up here, you would think that the Steelers have Dennis Allen, for Christ's sake. So hopefully, I'm hoping the Steeler fans get these idiot Yunzer fans get their way, and Tomlin does get fired, because he'd be unemployed for about 7 seconds, and I'm hoping that the New Orleans Saints would be first in that line, to brawl for his services.
Never had a losing season, right? As a head coach. Yeah.
Nope.
Yeah.
And he's worked with some bad rosters, talent wise. Yeah. I get the failures in the playoff thing, although the ones that are saying that are the same ones that are saying we need Bill Cowher back. Look at Bill Cowher's success rate in the playoffs. He second coming of Marty Schottenheimer. I know Bill won a Super Bowl in his next to last year, but I got news for you. That team just happened to get on a roll and won in spite of him, not because of him. Just like Marty, Bill's little butthole went like that, and he got ultra conservative. He coached not to lose rather than to win, and that's not the kind of coach I want. And this is the reason why I said 3 names, for you, because I got 3 names that I'd like to see them talk to. I've already mentioned Kingsbury, and I still actually expect that that the Saints will put in a request, to talk to him. But my 3 guys that we haven't heard anything out of it, especially from New Orleans Saints camp, Liam Cohen, the offensive coordinator for the Buccaneers, Mike LaFleur, the offensive coordinator for the Rams, and Wes Phillips. He's my outside the box guy. Wes Phillips, the offensive coordinator for the Vikings. All 3 of them are from the Sean McVay coaching tree. And I realize McVay is a lot like Peyton. That offense, I don't care who the offensive coordinator title belongs to, McVay runs that offense. But pretty much anybody that's come from the McVay coaching tree has had a lot of success. Again, you're talking about a strong personality that they've worked for. Cohen, having had a chance to oversee an offense for the first time, having a lot of success there in Tampa Bay. LaFleur, he's already considered a bright young mind. And Wes Phillips, man, I know O'Connell gets a lot of credit in Minnesota, but any staff that can make a Sam Darnold look like a competent quarterback, man, you got my vote. So that's why Wes Phillips is my outside the box guy.
Yeah, that's a good one. I wasn't even thinking that way. But that's a good one. Yeah, Darnold was another guy who got written off a few years ago. And here he is. Just to rub it in, because I'm in Charlotte, I mean, you have Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield that were both Carolina Panthers that are now leading teams in playoff games. That's not a shot at Bryce Young, because Bryce had a very strong end of the year, despite, or what did you say, in spite of the talent that was around him, because there is none. There is no talent. Just like the SpongeBob episode, no talent. But anyway, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You have Will at home. Will loves SpongeBob. Oh man. Well, next week, what we're going to talk about is, and we didn't get to it today, but I do think it's an important conversation to have now opposed to later, is how attractive is this Saints job in comparison to the rest of the league? I have my thoughts. Bob has his thoughts, and we'll save them for next week. I think that'll be a really good show. We would love to get you guys interactive throughout that whole thing. And you know what, Bob? We've talked about it for so long. It may be a good week for some of you regulars. I'm looking at John Butler. I'm looking at Jerry G. I'm looking at DJ. Guys like you to maybe jump on and give your thoughts live on the air with us. So I'll reach out to some of you guys individually, and we'll see if we can make that happen. Because I think it is a really important conversation. Because I think opinions on how attractive this job is will differ from person to person quite a bit. I really do. So with that, Bob, you have your work never stops, even though it's the off season. We've said that for however many years now. Just because it's the off season doesn't mean it's an off season for Bob. Doesn't mean it's an off season for John or Kyle T. Mosley as well. So, where can people find you, your work, your thoughts, and your opinions on the New Orleans Saints in what I call silly season?
I mean, it might be a silly season for us in the media too, but it is extremely busy. And you know this, Brendan. During the year, that most of the articles write themselves. You're analyzing an opponent. You're talking about what just happened in a game, good, bad, or ugly. And you're just breaking down the weekly injury reports and happenings of the team. It gets a lot more challenging in the off season. The Saints, Derek Carr, and looking for a head coach is making it easy right now. But we're going to have free agency previews. John Hendricks and I are going to break down what happened and why it happened at each specific position group, which Brendan, the Saints News Network does every year. So we'll be doing that, free agency previews, draft prospects, draft analysis. So it's going to be a very busy offseason for us all. And you can catch all of that along with, of course, breaking news and analysis of said breaking news, from myself, John Hendricks, Kyle T. Mosley at the Saints News Network, at Saints News over on Twitter, or the SI.com team page. I also post all of my article links and show links on my own personal social media, which is Bob Rose on Facebook and at Bobby R 2613. And if you guys have been watching, listening, following us for a while, that the last couple of months, Brendan and I at the Bayou Blitz are proud of being a part of the promotion for the original Go Black and Gold charity fan cruise. Now in its 11th year, the proceeds benefit the Get Checked or Check Out Foundation, which is one of the events that this promotion covers is the original Go Black and Gold charity fan cruise, now in its 11th year. And this year, former Saints greats like Delvin Breaux, Tyrone Hughes, Courtney Roby, Lance Moore, Michael Lewis, and the newest addition, Pierre Thomas. They're all going to be on the cruise. And folks, if you are going on the cruise, you'll get a chance to interact with all these guys, not just for little segments here and there. The entire cruise, they're intermixed with you. So make sure that you're signed up. I do believe tickets are still available. And the cruise is through the Seven Seas Travel Agency and is going to be from March 27th through the 31st, sailing out of the port of New Orleans. For booking, donations, or promotional information, contact Shireen DeWalt through the Go Black and Gold Celebrity Charity Fan Cruise Facebook page, or be a part of the Bayou Blitz Facebook group or any of our affiliated groups, Who Dat Domination, Who Dat Nation, or Under the Dome.
You forgot to include yourself on the list of people that they can interact with. Bob Rose will be on the cruise.
I will be on there.
Yeah, maybe next year I'll be able to join. We could have a Bayou Blitz, a live Bayou Blitz on the cruise. Wouldn't that be cool? I think Shireen, I know you're watching. I'm just throwing it out there for next year. Maybe it's a little early to be planning for next year's cruise, the 2026 cruise, but hey, I'm just throwing it out there. Let's make it happen. It'll be fun. For myself, you can follow me virtually everywhere at BT Boylan. You can follow all of my other activities. We'll see if I call a game for ESPN this weekend with all the snowstorm coming into my region of the world. We'll just kind of wait and see how that goes. I did officially get links for films today that were part of that early submission for one of the film festivals I'm a part of. So make sure you check out the Reel to Reel International Film Festival. It's here in the Carolinas. We'll start reviewing movies here soon. If you're a filmmaker or know a filmmaker that wants to submit, by all means, just check us out. Make sure you get those submissions in. And Bob, my friend, it's going to be weird now going from talking to you twice a week on the air to once a week, but we're going to have a good time. And for what I said, for some of you guys, if you're still hanging out, if you're still here, I will reach out to some of you guys individually on social media and see if we can potentially get you on the air next week just to share your thoughts. We'll give you a little 5-minute segment to share your thoughts on why you think this job as the head coach of the New Orleans Saints is attractive or unattractive, and give you a little bit of airtime, give you a little bit of time in our spotlights. They're not very bright spotlights. The ones behind us on the screen, it's just a digital screen. I could change it whenever. But I'd love to be able to interact with you guys. We talked about it for a long time, so it's a time to rip the Band-Aid off and just make it happen. So until then, I hope you guys have a safe and wonderful weekend wherever you are in the world, whether you're expecting snow, and especially if you're out in California, in the LA area with those wildfires, please stay safe. And until next time, hope you guys find some peace, spread love, practice positivity. We'll see you next week for another edition of the Bayou Blitz podcast. Who dat?